Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual training event. If you, by chance, were on our website, you were there to register for this event. Currently, we're scheduled to continue with this virtual training on out till the end of the month. I think around the 1st of April is what our last currently scheduled training event is, and undoubtedly, as we approach that date, we're going to add a whole bunch more up. So as long as people are freed up to attend these, we're going to keep doing them. I will say that today's presentation is probably going to be one of the shortest of all the presentations we do. It's a stretch to make this last probably 30 minutes. So just a heads up, we block out an hour to put these web conferences on, but rarely do they really take that long. My name is Dan Painter. I am the Product Training and Development Manager at Flint & Walling, and I will be hosting today's broadcast titled Flint & Walling Control Boxes. About, 7, 8 years ago, I suppose, we introduced our own self-manufactured submersible pump motor. And right along with that initiative, we were also introducing our own self-manufactured control boxes. And so that's what we're going to do today is just take a look at the boxes that we have available. You'll draw your own opinions by the time the presentation's over. But with that, let me, if this is your first introduction to Flint & Walling Control Boxes, welcome, and here we go. All right. When we look at control boxes, we'll start off by just saying that there are basically two categories of control boxes. The first one's up on your screen right now. They're referred to as what we call standard control boxes. And I think, some of you guys that are out there seasoned in this industry understand this fully. But within the standard control boxes, you have available from a 1/2 horsepower up to a 1.5 horse. So within the 1/2 horsepower, you can get both a 115 or a 230 volt box. And then beyond that, everything will be 230 volt. But again, when we talk about standard boxes, our product offering today will be 1/2 through 1.5 horse standard boxes. The second category are what's referred to as deluxe boxes. And these are the newest boxes that we've brought into the family of control boxes here at Flint & Walling. These were introduced probably a year or two ago. If time gets away, I don't know. It wasn't terribly long ago. But these are what's referred to as deluxe boxes. And they are going to be available to you in the 2, 3, and 5 horsepower ratings. So with that, that's our offering. So it's not a huge, broad line of boxes, but certainly we cover the bases on what I feel is necessary and what's needed in the marketplace. So with that, we'll look at these standard boxes first. I'm going to run down through, I guess, what a lot of people would refer to as just kind of the features and benefits. But not all of these features and benefits are going to be exclusive to our control box. But nonetheless, I'll start it off by saying that all of our control boxes that we manufacture are going to be powder coated, and they're going to have a NEMA 3R rating. The enclosure will have. Now, this powder coating is a very, as you can see on your screen, it's a very durable finish. We've used powder coating for decades and decades, and it's just a very durable finish. So it doesn't fade, it doesn't chip, it doesn't scratch, it doesn't wear away like a box that may simply be painted. The NEMA 3R enclosure indicates that these control boxes can be installed indoor and or outdoor. So they're designed for both indoor and outdoor applications. NEMA 3R, if you were to go to the NEMA.org website, you can fully understand their ratings. And a NEMA 3R is going to protect the internal components from rain, sleet, snow, ice, those kind of things that we'd find in the environment. So again, it's designed to be able to install it outdoors. All of our boxes are going to be CSA listed or CSA rated. Now, this certification is kind of like the UL in the electrical industry. We've chose to go the route of CSA for the reasons you can see on your screen now. Unlike the UL mark, I got my dashboard in front of my graphics here, so I'm having a tough time seeing what I've got up there. Unlike the UL mark, the CSA holds its value all around the world, not just the country of origin. And because we sell products across the world, we opt to go with that rating there, that CSA. Pretty standard within the industry. The other thing I'd say about these control boxes, again, once you enter the industry, and like I said, we entered this control box probably about 7 or 8 years ago. One thing you want to be sure of when you do that, when you take that kind of a step, is you want to make sure you're fully interchangeable with every other brand that's out there, because that seems to be a pretty common way with control boxes. And so with that, I would say that the Flint & Walling box is fully interchangeable with some of the major players out there that you can see listed on the screen. I will say this, that in some cases, our cover, which oftentimes on a small box like this, typically that's not repaired. We did a survey a year or two ago, and the overwhelming results were that people don't repair these boxes like maybe they would have 20, 30 years ago. They might throw a capacitor or relay in one. Today, they just simply, a lot of times all they're doing is replacing this front cover, as you know. And so that said, over here, this cover that we've designed not only fits our box well, it's actually fit competitors' boxes a little better than their covers actually fit. So they are fully interchangeable with other brands. We've also provided a lot of multi-size knockouts. You can see those pictured on the screen as well. I'll get this guy going. There we go. So these various knockouts down here, I know when we were in the design phases of our control box, a lot of the input we were receiving from contractors, not just on this box, but even on the 1.5 horse, the 3 and the 5 horse. Having knockouts there available in a variety of sizes is an advantage, because there are contractors out there that will install a lightning arrestor on every pump they sell, and they've told us repeatedly, it would be nice to have our own dedicated through port that we can bring those wires into these boxes without having to shove them in with the main power coming in, or the pump cable going out to the pumps itself. So there's a lot of knockouts there. You can see both the sides and the bottom. All right, moving on to the next is the terminal block itself. And I will say a few things about the terminal block. It's very well labeled, and this is actually the female side of this control box. But as that cover comes down, I think most of you know, the cover has spades that will mate up with this terminal block, and those spades are made them very heavy and very rigid, so that when you do pull that cover down on the box, you're not bending those spades, you're not misaligning them. So anyway, the terminal block, there was a lot of consideration given to making sure that it was well labeled. So there's your L1 and your L2. You've got grounding screws here down below. And then here's where your red, yellow, and black would go. So again, very, very easy to wire, very and well labeled. The capacitor and relay, this is the inside of that box. These are these spades I'm talking about down here at the bottom that interface with the terminal block. But both the capacitor and the relay are all made in America. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. If you're going to tout a made in the USA product, it ought to be made in the USA on the inside as well as the outside. And so the other thing that we opted to do in our design stage was to go with a voltage relay. I can remember several years ago when we were showing this control box publicly for the very, very first time. I happened to be attending a Tennessee groundwater show in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And we had our, like a lot of these small state conventions and trade shows, a lot of vendors show up, and a lot of them show up with cutaways, this, that, and the other. And I'll never forget having this control box out on the our display table in our booth, and I had it open just like you see over there on the right-hand side. And again, this was the very first time our control boxes and our submersible motors, for that matter, were being shown publicly. And so when this convention opened up, there were quite a few contractors interested in saying, hey, I hear Flint & Walling's got a new motor. I hear they got a new box. So just that alone, I think, probably drove the numbers at our booth. We had a lot of contractors come over wanting to see this stuff for the very first time. And I had a contractor pick that control box up that you see pictured on the right. He looked at it. He looked up at me and he said, well, I can tell y'all did your homework. And I had no idea what he was talking about. Well, what he was talking about was that relay. He goes, yeah, he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, a lot of these companies have went to this solid state relay. And he said, that old voltage relay, like what you all are using? Yes. He said, I had a lot less trouble with that than I have with these solid states anymore. Well, I don't know if that's true or false, but in his mind, perception was a reality. So we do opt to go with a voltage style relay here that you see. The only thing different in this box is this piece of hardware here. This is an early version. This piece of hardware there's no longer exists. These just pop into place and so on and so forth. The control box can also take pump protection, such as this Simcon. Simcon is a respected name out there. They make this 231 Insider pump protection. Those our boxes accommodate those, and they'll also accommodate the Franklin QD. So again, for additional protection, if you want to add this pump protection to a standard control box, there's real estate in there to be able to wire these in relatively easy. That Simcon actually puts a Flint & Walling, and I'm not saying I'm promoting this. I actually did this for the edification of our own salespeople. I said, hey, y'all know Flint & Walling is mentioned inside this Simcon Insider P pump protection. They said, yeah. I said, yeah, it says it right inside there. So you've got Franklin, you've got Pentec, you've got CentraPro. And then, of course, you've got the Flint & Walling box they added here at a later date, put it on page 9. And when you go to page 9, right there's your wiring diagram. So it's very, very easy. Whether we provide it or they provide it, it's pretty easy to wire in this pump protection with a Flint & Walling standard control box. This box that you're seeing here would be more of the horse and a half, so it gets a little larger than the 1 horse or the 3/4 or the half horse that I've got my cursor on. But what I want to point out here is our wiring diagrams. We have fixed those inside each of the boxes so that there's a resource there and a reference there on how these boxes are wired and how they are to be wired. So those are included inside the control box covers. And then the next thing we're going to go to now is this second category. I told you this was a relatively quick presentation, but you know, we just discussed the control box. I would say that let me go back one slide here. I'll tell you this, and this is a little bit of a story. We got a little bit of time, but when we introduced this box, I'll tell you, you think the ivory tower knows it all? Well, trust me on that one. They don't. And so we took this box out, and I remember back in those days, I was actually in the sales schemes of things and handing this control box to a contractor, just like you see right here. I handed it to him. I said, hey, I want you to check this thing out. I think you're going to like it. He put that box in his hand, looked at the front of it, handed it back to me and said, I'm not interested. And I thought, wait a minute, man. I mean, why in the world would you say something like that? You haven't even taken a peek inside. He said, I'll tell you why. You see that cover screw right there? I said, yes, sir. He said, that's what holds that cover to the box. I said, yes, sir. That's exactly what that does. He said, well, he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out a nut driver. He said, you see this nut driver? I said, yes, sir. He said, it fits every damn cover screw on every box I've ever sold by any company except that one. That's not the right size cover screw. And I'll be darned if I'm going to carry an additional nut driver around just so I can get your cover off. Well, I come back off that trip, and I'm going to tell you, that was one of the quickest changes we ever made. To get that daggone cover screw. So it had the same hex size as everybody else's. again, because a lot of contractors, they've got these tools they've used for years. And so, there's the ivory tower for it. But anyway, moving on to the second category, these deluxe boxes. As I mentioned, these are the newest control boxes that we brought into the family of boxes here at Flint and Walling. And so these boxes represent our 2, 3, and 5 horsepower models. And again, these are deluxe boxes. So looking at some of the F&Ds on that, like we did on the previous standard box, some of this will be a little bit redundant, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, which is probably why this presentation seems to go by so fast. But they're powder coated, just like we mentioned before. They've got the NEMA 3R rating. That's just a standard protocol for any box that we're going to manufacture here at Flint and Walling, is that we're going to have them powder coated and they're going to be rated for outdoors. CSA rating, same as the standard boxes. So here's what the box looks like on the inside. Over here would be your 2 and your 3 horsepower box right here that I've got my cursor circling around. The 5 horsepower box is going to be slightly larger. We needed more real estate inside the enclosure to accompany a 5 horsepower control box and a 5 horsepower motor. So there's your basically your 2 and your 3 horsepower, and then this would be your 5. But I want to point out some things that we have done different here in regards to these deluxe boxes. So if we look at the inside of a deluxe box, first of all, I guess talk about how you mount the thing. And so it's got a 3-hole mounting pattern. So you can mount it either on a wall or a center post, because it's got a center post keyhole mount up here at the top. So we've got that going for us. Up here is your start capacitor and also your run capacitors, and they're rated at 40 degrees, minus 40 degrees F up to 165. So they got a pretty broad ambient temperature range. The other thing I don't have my preview screen coming up like I sometimes have if I'm broadcasting from my office, but so I'm seeing the slides as they come up when you see them. But I think the other thing I've mentioned on these capacitors here is the fact that, once again, they're all domestic, so they're going to be all manufactured in the USA. Again, if you're going to tout that you're an American company and you're manufacturing American products, then try to be as absolutely pure as you can. And I'll tell you, that's an area that's getting fudged all the time. But anyway, those are the start capacitors and your run capacitors right up there at the top. Moving down into the box is this is a 3-pole contactor. This magnetic line contactor is matched up with the motor rating. And quite frankly, this contactor here is exactly the same as others in the industry are currently using. And so not a lot of difference here with that contactor. When we get down to the next portion of this box, right here is your terminal block. And again, this can easily accept number 6 wire. But there's a lot of room down here. All your wires are going to come into the top. All right, so we've pre-wired the whole bottom of this terminal block here to the contactor and the capacitors. So when you bring your wire in, it's simply bringing the wires in from the top side there, kind of like this. So you've got, again, you've got a very well labeled terminal block here, and you've got these pretty heavy duty grounding lugs off to either side. The other thing I want to say about this box, all right, okay, so it also has the multiple size knockouts, as you can see. And that was something that we put in our variable frequency drives and everything else. These multiple knockouts and the multiple sizes are something that apparently the industry has kind of been a little lean on. So we were told with no uncertainty that y'all need to put some knockouts in these boxes. But let me tell you something else we did. You're actually looking at the bottom of this box, okay? You're looking at the bottom of it. There's the cover screw that holds the cover in place. So, it would mount right there. One thing I want to point out, is it's not uncommon on a deluxe box made by any manufacturer to have these overloads, and just below the box you'll see these reset buttons. So these are your overload reset buttons that provides the pump and motor protection against the current and heat. Let me tell you what Flint & Walling did. We took those two buttons and we moved them to the back of the box, not the front of the box. Now, we didn't do that just arbitrarily. I mean, I had a couple dozen contractors that I ran this by. I said, listen, if we were to move those overload reset buttons from just underneath the front lip of the box to near the back of the box, is that going to present a big obstacle for you? Is that going to turn you off? What's that going to do? And the guy says, well, no. I mean, you know, God, I can still get to them. And I said, all right. He goes, why are you doing that? Why are we doing what? He said, well, why are you doing something different than anybody else does? You move those reset buttons all the way to the back. I'll tell you why. You see that relay? It now sets front and center. And that was something that we had a lot of contractor input on, because while they may not repair, you know, fractional horsepower boxes, and I get all that. I'm not debating that at all. You know, just replace it, right? That's what we do. That doesn't necessarily hold true throughout the entire control box offering. So when you get into some of these deluxe boxes, there are contractors out there that will replace components as needed, not necessarily the whole box. And one of the problems they had getting to was this relay, because if you look at everybody else's box, that relay, you've got your overloads up here in the front. See these overloads up here in the front? So your reset buttons sit right behind these or right underneath these, but your relay sits back against the back panel of the controller. Same here. It's hard to see. And I've had contractors tell me, Painter, you ever try to take one of those out? No, I can't say that I have. He said, well, let me tell you something. It's not easy. You know, you're trying to fish a screwdriver back there and, you know, unbutton this thing. And so what we did by moving those reset buttons back is we were able to move that voltage relay right there front and center. Again, it was just something that we did based on contractor input. So I thought that was pretty cool. It just makes it a little more convenient, I suppose, if you want to replace that relay up front. There's your two mechanical grounds, and then again, they're kind of the deluxe copper grounds on this thing. But you know, at this point, I've kind of walked down through this from the way it mounts to these capacitors, to the contactor, to the terminal block, and on down to this relay. Spoke of the reset buttons, and so therefore, I mean, there's not a lot more to talk about when it comes to a control box like this. So I had a lot of contractor input in the design of these boxes, and as you might have noted, and maybe not, and if not, I'm going to point this out. When we started this little presentation, I made a comment to you. There's two categories. Well, if you want a 2, 3, or a 5 horsepower box, it's going to be a deluxe. And I got people asking, well, you know, can we get standard boxes? And the answer is yes, but before you do, look at the price. You might find that deluxe box is a whole lot closer to the price of a standard box than you realize, and so there could be some added value there. But at any rate, I think I'm at the last of my slides here. It's, what's the time? Let's see, it's, yeah, I told you it'd be tough maybe to get this in outside of a 30-minute time slot, and I think we're probably about approaching that. But anyway, I think we're probably close to the end. I know that I believe Chloe has been on the line monitoring the chat box. So if you have questions, anything that I've talked about, there's some handouts attached to your dashboard. There's a survey there, and I will say this in regards to the survey. We, Flint & Walling, Dan Painter, any of our products will never, ever, ever, ever be so good that there's no longer room for improvement. And so that's what we're really looking for with these surveys. If you've got ideas of how we can enhance these virtual training events, if you've got topics you would like to maybe have a presentation on, feel free to put that information in on that survey. I've also got some handouts attached to the dashboard so that you've got a resource, some brochures on these boxes. And once again, I believe that Chloe has been monitoring the chat box. So let's just take a look at that real quick. See, there's a hand up. And let's see. Okay, question number 1 looks like any plans for capacitor run? I'm trying to look at that half. Any plans for capacitor run half through 1 horsepower? I'm not sure. Okay, somebody said they're trying. Okay, so I got a few comments, a few thank yous. I'm not sure I fully understand that first question. Are there any plans for capacitor run half through 1.5 or half through 1 horsepower? I'm not grasping that. I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you my email address. Maybe you want to just let me put this out there for you. If anybody's got a question, they want to send it to me directly. I can correspond this way. So I'm going to fire my email out here for you. Hopefully that'll post. So there it goes. Hopefully that got it. And if you've got questions beyond what we've got here, please feel free to ask. Chloe, I don't know if I've missed anything else. Anyway, I think with that, we're done. Listen, I appreciate you joining me today. If you're out and about, please be safe. And I look forward to talking to you again very soon. But again, with that, we're right at 30 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and close this one off. So I appreciate you all, and thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, Dan.